These are some shots taken when sailing recently along the Gulf of Guinea on a Tiki 21 catamaran. We'll come back for more clips from that sail, but first let's go over some of the history that took this 20-year-old boat from Canada to West Africa. I feel as if I have always known about James Wharram and his Polynesian double canoes. Like many others around the world, I've been following James and his colleagues for many years. Recently I dug out an old box of papers. Included were 2 copies of the Wharram design book, study plans of Wharram's designs, copies of the Sea People, West System manuals, and the receipts from building Tiki 21 Plan number 97. One study plan had been sent direct from Wharram's in the UK, one had come from their agent Tom Milano in Florida, and another one had come from Noah's here in Canada. I also found a 1991 handwritten note from Ruth Wharram encouraging me to start building. As you might guess, I had the plans for number 97 for some time before I finally got around to starting construction. The opening clips to this video are of 97, sailing recently off the coast of Ghana in the Gulf of Guinea. It has been a rather lengthy trip from the time when the boat was being built in a workshop on a farm on the Saskatchewan prairies in Canada. In 1981, James Wharram and his partner Hannah Boone first introduced the Tiki 21. I learned about it the following year. The design attracted a great deal of interest, and like many other followers, my mind was made up to build one. I ordered my plans in 1983, and as soon as they arrived, I set about preparing to build. However, life has a way of intervening in such enterprises. I was reminded that I had not yet completed the renovation of our farmhouse, and it would be best for me to do so before attempting to build a sailboat. So, the plans were carefully filed away for many years. Finally, with house renovations completed and a hardware store business well established, construction did begin in February of 1997. The boat was launched in the summer of 1999. Once the boat was in the water, it was clear that it was a family favorite, even though there was little time to sail it. For 3 summers, the boat was moored in the waters of Bright Sand Lake and introduced many family members and friends to the pleasures of sailing on a catamaran. In the fall of 2001, a much different chapter began for the still unnamed Tiki 21, as well as for our family. We sold the hardware store and packed our belongings, including the Tiki, into 2 40-foot containers and had them shipped to Ghana in West Africa. We trailered the boat to Busia, a little fishing village on the coast where we were building our new home, the African Rainbow Resort. There are a few photos of the boat in those early days. Some shots were taken from the boat during an early sail from our home base of Busia. There was nearby Fort Metalcross at Dix Cove to the west, and then to the east, Fort Battenstein on the hill overlooking the village of Boutry. There was also a rather controversial photo of the boat taken by Montreal photographer the late Robert Birch, unbeknown to any of us. Robert used his photo in an advertising campaign that he mounted for his client, our competitor, the Busia Beach Resort. His photo implied that the sailboat was part of their offering rather than our own. The boat was sailed only 5 times from Busia until a problem developed. The rudders and skates collapsed as we pulled up on shore during that last sail as we came in under the Gennaker. The failure was due to the poor quality of plywood that I had used. With construction of our hotel consuming all of our time and attention, the boat was disassembled and stored under a palm frond roof until there was enough time to make repairs. It took another 11 years before that happened, and during that time, with high temperatures and humidity of the tropics, other faults were manifesting themselves. In 2011, the boat was moved up the coast from Busia to Escape 3 Points, my son's eco lodge at Cape 3 Points. boat was moved under cover, and I began to work to remedy the numerous problems that had developed. Not only did this include replacing the faulty rudders and skegs, the bow and stern posts as well as lashing pads had also been made from the same poor quality plywood and needed replacing. In addition, rot had set into the lower part of the mast and one of the cross beams. My time was limited that year, and the work only just begun when I had to tend to other matters. I returned to the job for a short time the next year, and then in 2013 I got serious. With help from the Escape 3 Points team, the repairs were completed and the boat was repainted. We enlisted the local sign painter Bravo to give the boat some appropriate color as well as its new name. In Canada, a couple months before I resumed work on the Tiki, 4 women met in Saskatoon where I lived. Their meeting was the beginning of a very important movement for Indigenous peoples in Canada and elsewhere. The movement took the name Idle No More. In my opinion, it is Indigenous peoples who hold the key for the best chance of a future in these times of environmental change. In honor of the movement, I decided to give the Tiki the name Idle No More. So with its new name and a fresh coat of paint, it was time to move Idle No More to the beach. It was exciting times, with lodge guests and staff working together to make it happen. Regrettably, now with the boat set up on the beach, it was time for me to return to Canada. It was also time for my son to take over the ownership of the Tiki 21 number 97. A short time later, once again with lodge guests and staff coming together, Idle No More made its way to the sea. It was an experiment with a new approach to getting the Tiki over the wide sandy beach to the water using homemade rollers along with plenty of person power. As an experiment, the rollers could hardly be called a success. Once the boat was in the water, the next challenge was getting through the surf, and there were a few heart-stopping moments for those watching on shore. Finally, Idle No More was in her element, and I've been told that those on board had a wonderful afternoon sail. That time on the water was short-lived, and life for the boat's new caretaker intervened. For the next 6 years, Idle No More once again sat on the hard and once again began to deteriorate. Enter a new player, Beau Turnbow, who sailed with me on my new Mana in the summer of 2018. Beau had been restoring a Tiki 21 in Helena, Montana, and in October he brought his experience to Escape 3 Points to assess the situation and to set about getting Idle No More ready once again for the sea. The challenge was compounded by the difficulty in obtaining the required materials for the job. Epoxy had to be ordered in, plywood and wood had to be sourced locally, and at the last minute, a 20-foot aluminum tube became available to replace the rotten mast. With patience and perseverance, Beau ticked off the jobs. New hinged hatch covers, front and back for each hull, repaired cross beams, replaced crossbeam cleats and trampoline railings, various holes and cracks filled and glued, and a rebuilt mast. Then once again all had to be repainted. Then when all the work seemed to be done, a rudder failed on the second sail and new rudders had to be built. Through all this, Beau soldiered on, and finally it was time to take Idle No More out to sea once again. The boat was assembled and mast stepped. The Escape 3 Points crew assembled on the beach for the launch. This time, they used an excellent suggestion from Beau. Teams of 2 used heavy-duty straps to carry the boat to the water's edge. Of course, things don't always go as planned, and it took a second attempt to get through the surf. To add to the stress, the Honda outboard was not cooperating, and paddles were pressed into service. Finally, Idle No More was well clear of the rocky outcropping. Paddles were stowed, sails were hoisted. Once again, life was good, and we settled back to enjoy the sail.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I was thinking today we gotta.
The people of Cape Three Points rely on fishing and farming to support their families. We encountered several local fishing canoes working their way back and forth along the coast. We also passed the lighthouse. Cape Three Points is the southernmost point of land on the Ghanaian coastline. The point has long been used as a reference for ocean-going vessels. The first lighthouse dates from the early 1800s, and the current one, built in 1925, has been guiding sailors for nearly 100 years. Cape Three Points is also the closest land location on Earth to Greenwich Mean and the equator, 0 longitude and 0 latitude. So in spite of the challenging road to get to it, Cape Three Points can rightly claim to be the center of the world. The afternoon sail came to a close. Coming in through the surf is always easier than going out, and soon we were back on the beach at Escape Three Points Eco Lodge. Back at the lodge, my son Akwesi talked about his plans to keep the boat maintained and in regular use. He has selected one member of his Escape Three Points team, who is the son of a local fisherman, plus another older fisherman from the village. Once these two are sufficiently versed in sailing Idle No More, the boat will then be available for charters, sailing for the day on the waters of the Gulf of Guinea, or searching out hidden surfing spots, or just fishing for the night's meal of fresh cooked fish. As we have seen with Idle No More, a boat that is not used regularly soon develops problems. Akwesi wants to make sure that the boat is in regular use and given the maintenance that is required to ensure that that can happen. Bo's time is quickly coming to an end at Escape Three Points. Repairs took longer than anticipated, and he has not had much time to train the two men who will take over responsibilities for the boat. Akwesi would be happy to hear from anyone who might like to help out in that regard. If this is of interest to you, contact him, Akwesi, at www.escape3points.com.